Okay, so this is the 50th class. We're in the middle of the last chapter. Oh, this is weird. Host disabled screen sharing. And I'm the host. Do you guys get that? Wow, this is going to be really tricky. I thought I was the host. But as it turns out, I'm not. So, what do I do?
Hi, Moshe.
Hi, how are you?
Good, Baruch Hashem.
So who is the meeting host if it's not me? Anybody have any idea? This is crazy.
Nobody's listed.
Hello?
Sign in.
Hello?
Let me try this. Hold on just a second. I guess I'm not signed in somehow. Let me see if this works. Okay, I think I am now the host. Ha! Look at that. And we need this. I'm going to share this on the screen. If you're joining from Facebook, the way to see these classes is on patreon.com/mgenuth. And if you're in our group on Zoom, it's because you're part of our group. And if you'd like to join the group in some way, you can contact me on Facebook if you're watching there. Okay, so do you guys see the screen? Faith and Confidence? I'm going to make it bigger in a second, but...
Yes.
Okay, good. So let's just scroll back a little. Okay. So let's get back into things here. We talked last time about Abraham's equanimity. That before being commanded to walk before God, Abraham displayed what the Baal Shem Tov calls midat ha'ishtavut. And midat ha'ishtavut means that he was in a state of equanimity, meaning everything is the same for him. When we describe the state, it was a state of pure faith that everything that happens is good. And therefore, it doesn't matter to me whether you say yes or no to me. Meaning, whether God grants what I want or doesn't, for me, it's all the same. This is a very important state that a person has to learn to exercise in his life. So we spent a lot of the first chapter, almost more than a year ago, talking about how to enter that state. How to be in a state where we accept everything for what it is. And as we usually say, it is what it is. But more importantly, from the point of view of somebody who's serving God, accepting things the way they are means removing my judgment on them. I have to remove my judgment over what's going on. Because judgment in a human being's life is already related to what we call lower judgment. Lower judgment means that I, with my limited capacity, have an opinion whether things are good or bad, whether they're going in the right direction or the wrong direction, whether it would be better if they would be some other way. That's called lower judgment. And the Baal Shem Tov talks a lot about sweetening the judgments at their core. What does that mean? It means suppressing or submitting my own judgment and taking things back to their source. And their source is in God. Their source is in what is everything here, which brought about this world. And everything is proceeding according to that plan which was set out when God created the world. If I can connect to that place, so I'm sweetening the judgments at their core, meaning I'm submitting my own judgment, and I'm accepting Hashem's judgment, if you want. To accept Hashem's judgment is to say that I have faith that what is happening is positive. I have that faith. It's not an easy thing to achieve. We said that to do that, I have to purge myself of all my understandings, of all my machinations, of all my plans.
Moshe, does someone have their, mute off? Because I hear something in the background.
Yeah, I'll turn people off. It's okay. Okay. No problem. Okay. That's the hardest thing for us to do. Why is it so hard? Because really we didn't come into the world, into this life, we didn't come in order to just accept things as they are. That's why it's so difficult. We cry out every time something doesn't seem to be going the way that we want it to go. But that's because we have free will and we're supposed to exercise it. So if something is not working the way we'd like it to work, so we're supposed to try to change it. So when there's something that we can't change, that we have no possibility of changing, obviously that harms us, that hurts us terribly. Because, again, the soul was convinced to come down into this world because it was told, once you come into this world, you'll be able to chart your own course. The whole point of life is to go beyond the limits. So if I run up against the limit and I can't go beyond it, so I'm very frustrated. And it's only natural. That's how it's supposed to be. Because I didn't come down here to just be limited. However, there is such a state in the psyche that needs to learn how to accept some of the limitations that cannot be changed. There's not many of them. In other words, the Baal Shem Tov taught that when you're faced with a limit, don't pray for the limit to disappear. Because then you're just fighting against the limit, when you really should be concerned with the fact that this is limiting your ability to serve God. This is limiting your ability to do what you came down here to do. That's the pain. And that's called the Tsar HaShechina. That's called the pain of the Divine Presence. In other words, the Divine Presence is unable to appear through my actions. And that's the real pain, because that's what I came down here for. That's why I exist. So that's a critical point. That there are limitations, they're meant to be overcome, but the thinking should be that I'm overcoming them. I want to overcome them. I want them to disappear because I want to serve God. I want to do something. Of course, sometimes what I want to do is something that requires me to overcome limitations. Sometimes part of the whole action I want to do is to overcome limitations. For instance, the whole story of reality is to discover godliness in the world. Well, there's a very strong limiting factor in our ability to discover godliness in the world, and that's that God is concealed. That the world that He created is a world that has concealed Him. It's built into the fabric. You can't see the godliness. So, to do anything already requires you to go against the limitations, the built-in limitations to reality. But sometimes there is more personal limitations. Any young person who wants to get married and they have a hard time, even if they're not having a hard time, what they have to do, what they have to give up, is the limit that is self-imposed, that my life is meant to be for me. That personal freedom that a person has to give up when they get married is something that's very hard for young people today to do. It used to be easier, although I'm not sure that the conditions were the same. But I think it was easier for people. But the more we push forward in our development, and today, you can tell by the conspiracy theories what the most important thing in the world today is. Obviously, personal freedom. Because all the conspiracy theories from A to Z, or almost all of them today, have to do with personal freedom. That somehow somebody wants to take that away from me. That's obviously, it's a psychological problem. But it's no different than not being able to get married. Because it's coming from the same core. Coming from the same core problem. Which is that I am somehow very vigilant about my personal freedom to the point where I can't share my life with somebody else. And some people just don't know that by getting married you give up personal freedoms. So, okay, they're just walking into it because they don't get it yet. But eventually they get it. But as people grow older and they still haven't gotten married, they already understand that even a simple thing like going out on a date becomes something that takes away from your personal freedom. So that better be a lot of compensation for me to be willing to give over my time. So she'd better be beautiful, or he better be the best talker in the world, or really give me all the attention I want, and so on and so forth. So any relinquishing of my personal freedom has to be met with some kind of really good compensation. So this is an issue, that we have to get over limitations to do what we came here to do, and there are a lot of them. In fact, it says, "V'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha," should love God, b'chol levavcha, with all of your heart, u'v'chol nafshecha, with all of your soul, but most importantly, u'v'chol meodecha, which really means with all of your ability to get over limitations. That everything that you fight for in the world should be to serve Hashem. That's what b'chol meodecha really means. Because life is about getting over these limitations in different areas. So make sure that you're fighting the good fight. And the good fight is that this is going to lead me to be able to serve Hashem in some way. Okay, so that's a very basic thing, but okay, that's the main core of life. That's what we came down here to do. However, there are limitations that we have to learn how to accept. We don't accept them in the sense of that they're impenetrable, that they're insurmountable, that they're a dead end, and we can never get through them. We accept them as part of how the divine plan is unfolding. That right now, at this moment, this is a particular place that we can't go yet. So let me phrase it in a different way, which might sound a little surprising, let's say. What does it look like when the soul departs the body and looks down at the world of limitations? Many people are going to go tomorrow. Tomorrow's the 15th of Tammuz. And it's the day of passing of the Or HaChaim HaKadosh, who's buried on Mount Olives. A lot of people are going to go there, and they're going to beseech him, not just Hashem, but even him, to intercede on their behalf. They want his soul, the schus, that they come there and they say a kapitel of Tehillim, they do this or they do that. They say to the Or HaChaim soul, look, I did something for your neshama. Can your neshama do something for me? What does the neshama looking down from above see? It doesn't really understand. It doesn't really understand what we want. What are we talking about? Because looking down, you see the world as it should be. The way it is the way it should be. There's no other option. Because what you see looking from above is that the divine plan is simply unfolding. So why would anybody come and say, I'm not happy with what there is? Can't you see that what there is the best? Can't you see that this is all leading to the greatest goodness that can be for you, for everybody? That's how the soul, any soul, looks at the world from the world of souls. We're all in the same reality. The souls and us as physical beings, we're all in the same reality. But we have different perspectives on it. So the souls look at our reality from a perspective that everything that is as it should be. And so it's very hard for them to understand, souls that are not embodied, that are not here with us. It's hard for them to understand why is it that somebody would ask for something different. And the most difficult part is to understand, why would somebody ask for the limitations to go away? The limitations are sort of like, I heard this from Elon Musk not long ago. It's like a schedule. It's a schedule of events. You can't build anything if you don't have a schedule. You can't do anything if you don't have a schedule. There are limitations on how things need to proceed. And you know what? The more limitations, the better. What did I hear from him? I heard this. I didn't know. This is like a catchphrase now in the world of management. And it says, if it's long, it's wrong. If it's tight, it's right. You ever heard this? The schedule has to be tight. Meaning, there has to be a lot of things going on at the same time. A lot of limitations forcing us to move forward. Because that's what pushes us. So the soul looking from above is like this manager looking at the schedule that was given to the employees and saying, why would you want me to change it? If I change the limitations in terms of time, and the schedule looking at time, but it could be physical limitations as well. An engineer looking at somebody building a building will say, well, the wall has to be here. I can't push it out. Because if I push it out further, the whole structure is not going to be stable. So the soul looking from above is like the manager, the engineer, looking at what's going on and saying, why would you want me to change this? This is going exactly the way it should. So at the soul level, call it the faith level, the disembodied soul feels that the world is as it should be and the schedule is just right. And this is how it needs to proceed. And we have to have the ability to share that from time to time. That's what we call faith. Faith is the ability to connect with that level of looking at the world from above to below. That's how we described it. It's like you're leaving your reality, you're purging yourself of all your thoughts, and you're just accepting the way that Hashem sees everything. That's how you see it. You're trying to look at things from God's perspective, that there's only God, nothing else. And when you look at it from that perspective, Avram says, "For you have not given me offspring." What does he mean by that? You haven't given me offspring, says the Baal Shem Tov. He's not just saying, it's not a tirade. You're telling me I'll have many children, but you haven't given me any offspring yet. No, he says, hen li lo. Yes and no, for me, are the same. Whatever happens, whether I have offspring, I don't have offspring, from the point of view of the soul, it's all the same. It's going exactly according to plan. It's I, with my lower judgment, that have an issue. So, again, my main course in life is to challenge the limitations, not to accept them. But in order to rise to that state where I can really challenge the limitations for the right reasons, I need to be able to first come to a complacent state where I accept things as they are. Accepting things as they are is the gateway to working to serve God by battling the limitations. Emunah, faith, which is the state in which I can accept things as they are and see them as the divine plan unfolding, is the gateway to being able to change things with confidence. And that's what's happening in this passage. I wanted to read it to you in English so that it would be maybe, because we might not all be entirely familiar with what happened there. After these events, the words of Hashem, these events are the battle that Avram had with the four kings of the east. After these events, the words of Hashem came to Avram in a vision, saying, "Fear not, Avram, I am a shield for you. Your reward is very great." And Avram said, "My Lord Hashem, what can you give me, seeing that I go childless? And the steward of my house, the one who will inherit me, is Damascus Eliezer." Then Avram said, "See, to me you have given no offspring. Hen li lo natata zara. And see, my steward inherits me, and it's going to be Eliezer who inherits me." So again, on the face of it, this is an answer towards Hashem's statement, you have a lot of reward. What's going to be your reward? That you will inherit the world in terms of its thought, if you want the ultimate conspiracy, to change the world to believe in God. That's your reward. Avram until now has said that in order to give the entire world this gift called faith in God, I need to have a child. I need to have my own offspring. I need to have a people that comes out of me. That was supposed to be his reward. But the Baal, and so therefore you read the statement, but you have given me no offspring, as a complaint against God. But the Baal Shem Tov says, no, that's not what it means. It means really hen li lo. It's a drush, meaning it's not the literal meaning of the words, but it's very possibly easily understood that this is also what they mean. Literal meaning is it's a complaint. You haven't given me any offspring. The more inner meaning, says the Baal Shem Tov, is yes and no for me are the same. Whether you give me offspring or you don't give me offspring, I know that your plan is unfolding. But Hashem doesn't leave it at that. God doesn't leave it at that, because then he says, suddenly, the word of Hashem came to him. After he said this, he thought this is where it's going to end. He thought this was the end of the prophecy. You have a lot of reward. Avram says, I have no offspring. It's all the same to me. Whether I have a people or don't have a people to come out of me, it's all the same. But suddenly Hashem appears to him again. The word of Hashem came to him saying, what you think that by giving up on offspring, saying that it's the same to you whether you have or you don't have, that's not the end of the story. Because you said that, you passed through the gateway, here's what's going to happen. That one, meaning Eliezer, will not inherit you. It's not going to be through Eliezer. Why? Because there's also confidence in the world. You will get over this limitation. It doesn't seem possible. He's 99 years old. How at the age of 99 is he going to have a child? He seems to have given up in a certain sense. A lot of times we reach that. A lot of people will say that to you. That things began to change the moment I accepted them. You can do that by reaching a low point, where the only thing that's left to do is just to accept things. Or you can do that consciously, every day, 3-4 times a day. And the way we're teaching it is that you have to do this proactively. You can't reach this because it's a low point. This is part of our development. Every time we want to take a step forward to ensure that we're taking the step forward for the right reason, which is to serve God, to increase the divine presence in reality, we have to be first accepting of reality. We have to take it as it is. And again, we can fall back to the parable I've been using a lot, a metaphor of a young man wanting to marry a young woman, and so he can't start out by saying, I want to change her. That's not how you build a relationship. A relationship is built by, first of all, accepting you the way you are. It's true that once I accept you the way you are, this is also, by the way, when we're talking about any kind of therapy, the number one issue that has to happen between a therapist and a client has to be absolute faith. And faith means I accept you the way you are. I have no judgments on you. You're exactly the way you're supposed to be. I have faith in you. But this is not the end of the story, because suddenly Hashem says, but I have other plans also. My other plans are that I want you to create a nation. And so he says to him, only he that shall come forth from within you shall inherit you. And he took him outside, and now God takes Abraham into this famous altered perspective on reality. He takes him outside, as Rashi says, he takes him above the heavens. Gaze now toward the heavens, meaning that he was Rashi learns from it. You can understand it both ways, but Rashi says, I learned from this that he was above the heavens. Above the heavens in the sense above nature, above Avraham's nature, which dictated to him by astrology that he would never have children. And now Hashem says, you're above this. That the stars do not contain my divine plan. Science, for all its ability to describe reality, is not able to predict what the divine plan is. Description is not the same thing as prediction. It's true that modern science likes to predict things, and that's how it tests whether a theory is right or wrong. But we all know that there are limits to that. We don't know, even though we know a lot, we can describe the weather and everything that happens in the atmosphere. We have very good scientific descriptions of what's going on. Our capability of predicting what will happen is very limited. So whether it's weather, meteorology, or astrology, or physics, or thermodynamics, it doesn't matter. Our predictive ability is always very limited. So in Avram's time, or today it's genetics, right? Genetics is going to tell you what's going to happen with you. So in Avram's time, that was astrology. That was supposed to predict for you what your abilities would be. And astrologically, Avram, who was a great astrologer, knew that he would never have offspring. So Hashem takes him above that. He says, that's not where the divine plan unfolds. Why? Because the whole divine plan is predicated on human beings with free will. That's why the heavens can never tell you what the final result is going to be. Because the heavens cannot take into account free will. They cannot take into account man's trust in God. That changes everything. That's a wild card. And I'm telling you, says Hashem, gaze now towards the heavens and count the stars if you are able to count them, so shall your offspring be. It's not that the heavens don't have any connection to what's going on, they do. But it's not how they're organized. It's something that Avram would never have thought of. How many stars are there? That's what the heavens are telling you. Their message is not Avram cannot have children. Their message has all along been, how many children will Avraham have? He changed his whole way of looking at nature. He changed his whole way of looking at his life. It's still the same data, but you didn't get it. You didn't understand what the point, what the message behind this data was. You thought it was predicting that you would have no children. And I'm telling you, says Hashem, to reread the data, look at it again, and you'll see that what it's telling you is, this is how many children you'll have. It's a tremendous shift in his thinking. It's a tremendous shift in his understanding. But that gives him the motivation now to push forward. And again, it all started from the fact that he was willing to accept things for what they were. So the way we have, Baruch Hashem, a lot of perspective since Avram, we have the Baal Shem Tov. So we know that this doesn't have to be a once-in-a-lifetime event. For Avram, this is apparently a once-in-a-lifetime event. Maaseh Avot Siman Labanim. That what the patriarchs went through becomes a staple. Siman in this case is like a staple for the descendants. That we can do this all the time. Every day, you set aside time to accept things the way they are. And to feel that everything that is happening is the divine plan unfolding. My wife is now meeting this woman, very interesting, who's studied a lot of Chassidus. And she gave her a meditation that my wife shared it with me yesterday, and I found it to be incredibly beautiful because she learned the meditation from looking at what the Baal Shem Tov did. How did the Baal Shem Tov come to this state? How did the Baal Shem Tov exercise hen li lo? Yes and no for me are the same. How did he come to the state of accepting reality for what it is, as the divine plan unfolding? We know that the Baal Shem Tov grew up in the forest because his father passed away and his mother passed away, first his mother, then his father. He basically grew up as an orphan, and there were no relatives to take care of him, so he grew up on his own. So I don't know how many of you have done this. I did this once, and it was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. In Israel, we don't have forests, so I don't know how much you can do it in the forest. I mean, we have a little bit, so maybe you can do it outside of Yerushalayim in some areas, like in Beit Meir. And Reb Usher Freund used to go there a lot to do this. The hardest part about being with God is not just being in the sense of, here we are, I'm sitting here in the comfort of my home, it's daylight outside, everything's fine, it's good, and I'm with God, I feel that I'm with God. That's a very fleeting feeling. It's not very strong. I don't really feel dependent, because I'm sitting on my comfortable chair in my office. I'm well fed. There's no danger. When you go out into the forest, or in Israel, if you really want to feel this, I think it's not just in the forest, you have to go to the deep Negev, to the deep desert. And you have to go in the middle of the night. And the way you do this, at least the way I did it, was you take your car and you go to a really distant location, and you get there at dusk, and you leave your car, and you walk. You don't have to walk long. You walk 10 minutes even, 20 minutes. And you let night fall. And you suddenly find yourself in the middle of the wilderness. And believe me, it's not empty. And you should do this, you can do it on a night with the moon, like tonight. Today's the 13th, so there's a big 14th, so there's a big moon. You can do it even on tonight, but all the more so if you do it before the moon rises, or you do it in the beginning of the month or end of the month when there's no moon. And it's pitch black. And then talk to God. You're going to talk from a very different place. You're going to talk from a place of dependency. You're going to feel how dependent you are. You're going to feel that this is not your world. You're going to feel that you're not safe. What you're going to feel is your absolute dependence that Hashem is in control of everything. If you're going to make it through a night in such a place, you have to learn to have complete faith, not trust, but complete faith that everything is in God's hands, that things are as they should be, and they're okay. It's a very difficult exercise to do. I do recommend it, but I know that it's hard, so that's why I was so... I'd forgotten about this. I did this when I was 24. When I taught Faith and Confidence, I don't know, about 6-7 years ago, so there was one woman who was a convert who said that after having done such a thing, not knowing even what she was looking for, she started looking for God. She got stuck in the woods one night, somewhere in North America. And she discovered God that night. She discovered what we mean. Because we don't mean the God that's concealed in the sense that he's concealed in my room right now. We mean the God that's revealed when you have to rely on him to make it through a night. It's something very, very different. It's a very different encounter. So the reason I forgot about this. And then suddenly my wife told me that this woman had done this meditation with her. And she did something very interesting. She said, imagine that you're with the Baal Shem Tov in the woods. And try to think about how he goes through a night like that. And he spent many nights like that as a child. He spent many days, even weeks like that in the years that he was a hermit. He was already married, but for 10 years he was learning with Achia Shiloni. One of the things I remember very clearly on that night that I was out in the wilderness by myself was that the world is not empty. In fact, the moment you go out into a place like this, the thing you feel the most is that heavens are very heavy. They're really on you. It's a total presence. It's like you can cut through the air. The world is not a vacuum at all. So she said to my wife, now imagine that you're in the woods with the Baal Shem Tov. You're looking at him. How is he taking this? He's taking it with a lot of faith. To the point where, after so many nights of doing this, it might be that for the Baal Shem Tov, it's second nature. It's not, you never lose it entirely. You never fully become used to it, to this altered state of dependence on Hashem. But take it from him, look at his eyes, see how he conducts himself in the presence of Hashem in this way, that he's entirely dependent. And that Hashem's plan is unfolding and it's good. And so he's not afraid of anything. That's really what he meant when his father said to him, and he related this, fear nothing except for God. You can't really learn this when everything's easy and dandy at home. You can't really understand the meaning of those words. In a certain sense, you have to bring this about. You have to take the step to make this happen for you. And that's what Avram felt. That's the way you come to this feeling of yes for me is like no. That they're the same thing for me. Why? Because I'm in a state of absolute faith. I've purged all my thoughts. In the sense, there's nothing that I can hold on to except for you. But like we said, that's a gateway. That's not where it ends. That's not the ultimate state. That's not what I came down here for. It's just that this is a necessary step to embark on my true mission. And so I need to do this maybe a few times a day. I have to learn how to bring this up a few times a day. That everything is fine the way it is. And I'm working for you because everything is in your hands. But then I come out of that. And then God says, but that's not my plan for you. My plan for you is to do what? To walk before me. To walk before me means that your free will is going to overcome these limitations that you see. That's really what I want from you. For that, you're going to need confidence. Confidence in me, trust in me, confidence in God. And so from confidence, what connects faith and confidence? So faith, we've said many times, is the crown. Confidence is simply the strongest of the emotive faculties. And what connects the two is knowledge, da'at, human consciousness. Faith is to have divine consciousness. Confidence is to be a human being with free will. To move from faith into confidence, you have to go through knowledge, through human consciousness. And so the next statement that Avram says, before he says this, it says he had faith in Hashem, and God considered it as righteousness. So Avram has faith. But then suddenly he falls. He's not falling. He's trying to bring it down into confidence. The next verse says, he said to him, first Hashem says to him, because of his faith, I am Hashem who brought you out of Ur Kasdim to give you this land to inherit it. He says, what I want from you is to inherit this land, in spite of the limitations. And then Avram, trying to bring it down, goes through knowledge, and he has a question. And Avram said, my Lord, whereby shall I know that I am to inherit it? I believe that I will inherit it, but I don't know yet. Knowledge is to bring it down into confidence, is to be able to be confident that I can enact this, I can embark on my true mission. And so the continuation is that he has the covenant between the shards with him, and then he says to Avram, Hashem says to Avram, know with certainty that your offspring shall be aliens in a land not their own, and they will serve them, they will oppress them 400 years. And after that they will leave with great wealth, and the fourth generation shall return here, and they will inherit this land. What is he telling him? He's telling him, if you would have been able to bring it entirely down into confidence right now, it would have happened in this generation. Because you can't, it's going to take 4 generations. Because that's how it works. You can't always do things right away if you didn't have the way to transfer your faith into confidence. It may take time. But he says to him, know with certainty. Yadoa teda. Your knowledge has to be strong. It has to be confident, certain is another word for confidence, for trust. I'm certain that this will happen. And so that's the part where we have to, as we'll see, the knowledge requires us to, with certainty, build a plan of how this is going to happen. Whatever we have faith in, we have to transfer it into a plan of action. And that's going to be a lot of our topic in the next few classes, about how we build this plan of action. Okay? Let's read just a little so that we don't come out without having advanced a little bit. So, line 693, when commanded to perform the covenant of circumcision, Avram ascended to a higher level of sanctity through the changing of his name, indicating that his very essence had changed. As the sages say, Avram cannot have children. This was his astrological belief before all of this. And Avraham can, when he suddenly realized that he should be reading the stars not as predicting his sterility, but rather predicting the number of his offspring. This change implies that he was given the power from above to rise even higher from his measure of faith in God which we said is to acknowledge and accept and be complacent about reality, to where he could attain confidence in God's goodness as it appears openly to human eyes, as we understand that goodness should be. We've talked a lot about that. That the plan we make has to be something that when we see this happening, we will say, indeed, this is what we wanted. This is the goodness we were looking for. That's why towards the end of davening we say, "V'techazena eineinu b'shuvcha leTzion berachamim." We want to see your return to Zion with our eyes. We're not interested in just a spiritual event that happened without our eyes. Our eyes have to be involved. How are they involved? What, are you suddenly going to see God? No. Your eyes are involved because you measure goodness by your own eyes. There has to be something that you accept with your own eyes as goodness. That when you see it, you'll admit, yes, this was what I was looking for. So whatever you're planning, however you're planning for God's goodness to appear, it has to be in a way that you'll be able to open your eyes and say, yes, this is what I was looking for. The prominence of confidence over faith is like the prominence of straightness over the circular. So we've talked a lot about this, about the line and the circle, that faith is like a circle, and confidence and going against the limitations, that's like a line piercing through a reality. And one can think of the image of a person walking straight towards his goal, like Nachshon ben Aminadav, who simply leapt into the waters of the Red Sea, even as the Jewish people were directly pursuing, walking straight towards their goal, Mount Sinai. So he was clear in what he wanted. Hashem said, we're leaving Egypt to go serve him on Mount Sinai. That's where I'm going. And I'm not going to take a roundabout route. I'm not going to take any detours. Straight line. That's what overcoming limitations is about. Walking straight and directly towards one's goal means no circumventing, no detours. But again, that's only after I first go through this gate called faith. And really, the faith and the confidence are like a run and return in the soul, as we learned in the first chapter. Except that, as we also learned in the first chapter, most of our lives are spent on the confidence, and only small a portion of it in this world is about faith. In the world to come, it'll be after the resurrection of the dead, it'll be the opposite. That most of the time will be in faith, and only a small amount of the time will be in confidence. But in this world, most of the time we're supposed to pursue our goals and overcome the limitations that reality imposes, and only part of the time, a smaller amount of it, go into a state of faith. Okay, so if there's questions, you can open your, if you want to. You don't have to. And I just want to remind you that if you're on the Patreon, then every week, thanks to Shuli Kleinman, we get a summary of the class. So I posted also on the post on Patreon. So you can see it there. If I can also send them to the group if somebody's not on Patreon for whatever reason. And I find them to be very, very, very good. I usually go over them and edit them a little, just to make sure that everything's right. But they're really good notes. Okay, so it's great seeing everybody, and hope to see you next week, all in good health.